And we are live on this beautiful Wednesday evening. Actually, it's raining here in Western Michigan, but it's a great day. It's a great day for freedom. We've had a couple of big wins that have happened recently, and I wanted to have some of these people join on here because they represent a business, and obviously David Kallman represents Great Lakes Justice Center, and there's so much that's happened with both OSHA and these mandates and clarifying what's happened. So I thought we would bring them on here and explain how people, first of all, are standing up. And guess what? What kind of reaction did we get as they stood up? So to start out, I'd like to introduce you to the two people representing Consumers Power here. And they want to have them tell you a little bit about themselves and the story that happened and how they joined together and how they took action. And this included, of course, David Kallman from the Great Lakes Justice Center as well. Pastor Lang, how about you start out, and then we'll move on to Jeremy. You are muted there. For some reason, I'm not hearing you. I was hearing you before, but I'm not hearing you now. How about if you go out, Pastor Lang, and come back in, and I will have Jeremy. Why don't you go ahead and start?
All right. Well, this started for me, and Pastor Lang is going to have to give a little background once he gets back, because some of this started long before, I think, even the November 4th date when the OSHA mandate dropped and Consumers Energy announced that we are federal contractors and would fall under that executive order. So a couple of days later after that, I got an invite to a Facebook group from a friend. I can't even recall who it was at this point. For a group that is looking at trying to gather people together to support each other in the midst of the really all the fear and concern around this mandate and what was going to happen with our jobs. So I accepted that through the page, and very quickly found out that Pastor Lang and his son were hosting Sunday afternoon after their morning service a meeting there at their church to discuss what was going on and see if there was anything we could do to try to band together and push back to try to protect our jobs. So at that point, I reached out to some friends of mine in the company to see if any of them wanted to go. I ended up meeting just a person or two down there, and we had a good meeting. They just talked about what was going on, what they had set up, and began to talk about what our options were. So I don't know if you want me to continue or if you'd like to go back to Chuck to pick up the story before that and then bring me back in, Ron. Would you like me to continue? Boy, I'm not hearing anybody now.
I'm muted. Can you hear us, Pastor Lang? We can't hear you. I don't know what's going on, but we cannot hear you. Can you try and log in through your phone or something for a while? I could hear you just fine. Let me check here just a second. I see you've muted and unmuted, but try it now. Anything coming out? Nope. I just can't hear you. I don't know what's going on. Can you try it from your phone maybe? And we're just going to carry on with a couple of things in regards to these changes that have happened. So Jeremy, let's get back to you while he goes out and comes back in, and let's talk about your position in Consumers Power, because it's important, because you represent some of the I think the union there, correct?
Yes, I'm a local president in the Lansing area. So I came down to the meeting, and of course, in the group, we wanted to try to align and across both sides of the company, because this was affecting all of us equally. So there was a talk and a discussion about what was going on and some encouragement and prayer, and then there was a meeting after that Sunday morning meeting with everybody, where we were just trying to see who was there and who may have some influence to help try to grow this thing so that we could we could see what our options are. So met with Pastor Chuck and his son after the meeting and talked a little bit, and we decided we were going to go out and try to recruit from both sides of the business other people who would be interested in pursuing basically organizing to stand up and ask the company to consider how this was affecting us and to consider what their actions may be on our behalf.
Fantastic. So at some point, hopefully Pastor Lang can be heard now.
Good evening. Do you hear me?
We can hear you just fine. So we've heard from Jeremy, his position, how he got involved with you and how he got people from both sides of the consumers to join together. How about if you tell us a little bit about how you organized this group and what it is that you did, and then we're going to talk about what happened yesterday.
Yes. In September, we heard Joe Biden speak on national television, telling that the mandate for large employers of 100 employees or more were going to be forced to take the vaccination. So I was on vacation out at my daughter's house in Nebraska when I got a call from my son, Joe, and he had told me that we need to do something. We need to gather a group. So 5 Christian men, just decided that we would form a little nucleus, and we would find a name, and we would get a Facebook page, and we would just let anyone who wanted to join us, who was concerned, who would not comply, who feared losing their job. And so that group did not really grow back at the end of September, early October, because we didn't push anything. What we did instead was we reached out to senior leadership and we expressed our concerns. And I will tell you that we met with the CEO, Mr. Garrick Rochow, and with the head of human resources. And they invited us to a meeting. It lasted about 45 minutes. There was 5 of us, plus the 2 in leadership. They heard our concerns. They wrote everything down. They were very understanding, and they allowed us to begin to send to them information to their email about our concerns about the lack of safety of the shot, and the potential harmful effects, and the fact that we were Christians. And we at that point asked that there would be religious exemptions included, and we were told that they believe very strongly that religious exemptions would be allowed. So fast forward to November 4th. November 4th, we got the official letter that now we are on a timeline of December 8th to take the first vaccination shot, or submit your religious exemptions by that date. And so we began to grow our group. We began to strategize these 5 minutes. My son, Joseph, a man named Ken, a man named Dave, myself, and there's another gentleman that I haven't spoken to him today to get his permission to use his name, but the 5 of us really began to build our Facebook presence. And we grew from that day until this day, which is just less than 2 weeks, to over 1,600 people. And one of the first things we wanted to do was what Jeremy had mentioned. We wanted to have, as quickly as possible, a meeting for as many consumers energy people in a short period of time would be able to join for a town hall, come together, voice your concerns. And that was on November the 7th at our church. So from there, we have taken on more people in leadership. We've grown a nucleus of 12 people. We've built a website called ubcmi.com. We've grown our presence not only on Facebook, but on Signal and on Telegram. We are building a large database of emails, just a large email list. We're communicating that way. And our email just came online yesterday, and its functionality is increasing more and more. So that is just it in a nutshell of the concern that we had for each other at the beginning, and then the concern for our fellow employees, brothers and sisters, both union and non-union. We just wanted to be a hub. We just wanted to be a place where people can come, a safe place, and be able to share their concerns. I can't hear you, Ron.
We appreciate all of you, both of you being here, all of you being here. And we thought it's important for people to understand why businesses and individuals in businesses need to stand up and stand together and let your employers know that you are organizing to let your voices be heard and that you're going to defend those. Now, there are a lot of people that took a vaccination, but that doesn't mean they're not defending those that should have the individual rights to choose as individuals or for their family and so on. And so that's what we're seeing all across this country. And David, I'd like to bring you in here and talk about how you got involved, but also I'd like to have you spend just a couple of minutes because people are very concerned or confused, I should say, on the three areas of mandates. It's really gotten carried away. We have state mandates. We have individual businesses who can make decisions. We have this federal contracting executive order, or EOs from the president. And then we have him trying to utilize or weaponize an OSHA for employers of 100 people or more. And each of these have their own place, and each of them have different challenges in court and otherwise. And everybody in Michigan kind of falls under different, but it's interesting, like this one, it fell under two categories. They were a federal contractor. That was the first thing they heard. And then when OSHA came on, oh, there's our cover. We're going to use OSHA. Now, of course, it looks as if they've kind of backpedaled a bit, and I'd like to hear what your thoughts are and what you've seen happening. And I want to make sure that everybody out here who represents a company of your own or works there to follow what it is they're doing, and we'll get hopefully some good results like we have so far at Consumers. David.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. This is, it's like the never-ending chicken that you're trying to catch, and it just keeps getting out of your reach a little bit. It's that sort of a thing. Right now, there are basically two mandates at the federal level that are being conflated all the time, put together as if they're one, and they're two different ones. One is the OSHA emergency temporary standard, they call it. It's not a rule. It's not gone through the process. It doesn't last forever. It's a very short-term rule, like 6 months. I think they can renew it for 6 months, something like that. But that was put in place and was done in a very hurried way. And that was the one that applies that, they're trying to do it through OSHA, that applies to any business that has 100 or more employees, any business. So that covers an awful lot of people in the country. Then there's the second one, which is the executive order that was issued by President Biden back in early September. And that's the one that applies to federal employees and federal contractors. Now, there are some people that are exempt from it, like United States postal workers, Congress. Of course, they always exempt themselves from everything. But those are two separate mandates, one being President Biden's executive order, the other being the OSHA. So when you look at those two things, you got to understand that maybe you might fall under one of them or not the other, or you might fall under both. Now, what's happened with the OSHA rules, I'm sure most people are aware at this point, is the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals out of Louisiana ruled last week, issued an order, a temporary order, and then a preliminary injunction staying the enforcement of those OSHA temporary standards. So those are no longer in place. Nobody has to follow those. And I'm sure they're going to be appealing it to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we'll see what happens in the coming months. But for right now, you have a business, you have over 100 employees, you are not mandated to do anything pursuant to the OSHA standards. Those are stopped, they're stayed, there's an injunction issued. The president's order, though, is still there. Now, there's lots of lawsuits that are pending right now. I think there's 18, 19 state attorneys general that have filed lawsuits against his executive order, as well as some other organizations. But none of those have gotten to the level of having an injunction issued yet. They're still in the early stages and having briefs and things like that. So there is no order stopping the president's executive order for federal contractors, and that's where consumers came in. So other mandates beyond that, honestly, I'm not aware of any state mandate right now that is in place. I don't believe there is. Governor Whitmer has been trying to get all the private sector to do it for her, but I don't believe she's actually issued a mandate. I think they're doing things like giving incentives and stuff like that to businesses if they start enforcing the mandate themselves. So that's leading to a lot of lawsuits. In fact, we're going to be filing a lawsuit here shortly, probably before the week is out, involving a major health organization that's national. But we're going to be filing in federal court to get an injunction against their vaccine mandate. So those things are going on right now. Now, I got involved with the consumer situation because Pastor Lang called me when he heard I was going to be in Jackson last Thursday night speaking at a Republican event, and wanted to know that there were so many consumers power folks, upset, obviously, with what was going on. Wanted to know if we could meet afterwards. So I said, of course, be happy to. And we met, and there was a large number of people there at that meeting. And then we had some chat and, talk the next few days. And we've agreed as Great Lakes Justice Center to represent United by Culture. And that's what we're doing. And we did, then the next step was we prepared a letter. We call it a demand letter, and lawyers do. And we sent it yesterday afternoon to the president of consumers as well as their general counsel. And then that letter was basically saying, look, even under the president's executive order, it allows for religious exemptions. And one of the things consumers was doing was telling everyone you had to have a letter or some kind of documentation from a religious leader. I don't know, somebody from a denomination or your pastor or priest or imam or whoever, that you had to have them signing off on your request for an exemption, as if you did not have a sincere religious belief unless your pastor says you do. That's blatantly illegal, unconstitutional. There's case law all over the place. I won't bore you with the details right now, but that was a big part of our letter yesterday, saying you guys can't require that. And if you do, we're going to litigate that. We're going to court because you can't do that. And you need to give proper accommodation and grant these exemptions. So we had sent that letter yesterday. There were a number of other problems that I won't bore you with now, but that were included in our letter. I think Pastor Lang has sent it out to everybody, that's in his organization. I don't know if they have it posted yet at their website, but it will be up there. And everybody can see the letter we sent. Then last evening, my email started blowing up again when we heard that consumers had now backtracked and said, no, now we're not going to enforce the mandate. And they said there had been some kind of directive or something that had come from the GSA, the federal agency, and that they no longer had to follow the executive order, that President Biden was apparently exempting now public utilities from his order. Now, that doesn't exempt any other federal contractors, but it does exempt apparently consumers, DTE, public energy utilities. I've been told, I think Pastor Lang told me this earlier today, that there's nothing in writing. The actual order has not been amended to say that, but that in a FAQ, frequently asked questions section at the GSA website, they added a line that said last night that, or I guess the night before, that public utilities were no longer going to be required to comply. And I think they knew, look, we're going into a season here where there are power outages, storms happen. We need as many people working on the line and doing this and restoring power as you can. They can't afford to lose 20% more of the workforce. There would be people without power for weeks. You want to talk about killing people? That's the sort of thing that could kill people, by not being able to supply energy during the worst, winter seasons in the north in our country. So I think that's what's behind it. Again, there's really been no formal change in the executive order or anything official. It's just a frequently asked question, and the GSA said this, and so that prompted consumers then to say, well, then we're not going to enforce it, and we'll go from there. But in any event, we're here and prepared through Great Lakes Justice Center to stand by United by Culture and every other company out there that's being forced, or they're attempting to force, through this executive order, which is blatantly itself illegal and unconstitutional. But the court cases are going to be coming through to prove all that. But we're there ready to help defend people, and people need to be encouraged. We're starting to see more and more cases going against this tide, this flow against us, like the Fifth Circuit decision, like our case with Western Michigan University, where the athletes, we actually got the first injunction anywhere in the country in federal court, in the appellate courts, in the Sixth Circuit. We were the first one to get an injunction against a mandate. So the tide is turning, folks. You need to be encouraged. You need to keep organizing, banding together, and fight these fights and step up to the plate. And to use a phrase, stand up. That's what they need to do.
They do, and consumers has, and thankfully a group of people got involved. I think the one interesting thing I think people need to get to is, we used to, last year we called the frontline people. They were considered the doctors, the nurses, the people. They obviously had to be in it. Everybody else was in lockdown, but they were the chosen group that had to go out there and face the virus and bring it home and deal with all of those things. Now those same people are being told, you either get vaccinated, even though they have immunity in a lot of cases, or we're going to fire you. We're seeing that in healthcare facilities too. One interesting thing that I always am asking, and I want to ask you this, is if indeed this is an emergency, and in the case of OSHA, for any emergency, it needs to be as defined in OSHA. It has to literally be a life and death kind of situation. It has to be imminent danger in order for them to have an emergency and not follow the normal protocol, which I don't think is going to hold up under OSHA anyway. But how do you do carve-outs if it's an emergency for the Postal Service or for whatever,
Right.
and say it's about the health of people? How do they answer that question?
I don't think they can answer it. And that's one of the problems they've gotten, why I think the courts are going to rule against them. And again, it's an emergency. I mean, Biden's been talking about this since last summer. And now they finally, some 3-4 months later, actually came out with a proposed rule. And this is an emergency, and it took them months to do it. It's 490 pages long for an emergency. Are you kidding? And then it's not going to be enforced for 2 more months until January 4th. So you're talking 5-6 months after this so-called emergency. It's ridiculous. And I don't think it will stand up to legal scrutiny. No way.
It was stated, which thankfully was actually in writing. I've got a part of that Fifth Circuit ruling here. And the one thing they said is, of course, for more than a century, Congress has routinely used this power to delegate policymaking specifics and technical details to executive agencies charged with effectuating policy principles that Congress lays down. Again, it's done by Congress. In the mine run of cases, the Transportation Department can handle interstate highway, and it goes on to a couple other examples. Says this is generally well and good, but health agencies do not make housing policies, and occupational safety administrations do not make health policy. But they went on to say that Biden's own, it is his chief of staff, Ron Klein, retweeted from MSNBC's anchor that said OSHA's doing this vax mandate as an emergency workplace safety rule is the ultimate workaround for the federal government to require vaccinations. They've been looking for a reason. And I want to mention to all of you out there to know that this is like a heavyweight fight. We've just entered round 3 or 4, and we actually won this round pretty big right now. But if you believe that this government, this administration, this progressive agenda, this great reset that they're trying to do by taking control of every aspect of your life. Right now, it's over 100 employees. They've already discussed taking it down to literally everyone, which OSHA really has never had or have never enforced to smaller businesses. The idea is to be able to utilize this. Think of climate change. Think of how businesses affect the health of people based on what we do, what we buy, whatever it is. If we succumb to this and allow a government agency, an unelected bureaucratic group, to be able to do, not unlike our state health department or local health departments have done with unending timeframes, We are setting ourselves up for a very sad example. And I want to go back to Pastor Lang, and then I want to come back to David and Jeremy. I'm going to come to you too. There is, when we get these results like last night, when you get this email that gives you this relief, our first thought process, and I talked to Pastor Lang earlier about this, was to say thank you, Consumers Power, first of all, for listening to our voices. I personally have a problem with that. I personally do. Because number one, what we're saying is we're apologizing and thanking them for letting us keep our freedom a while longer until OSHA or until this next mandate comes, because they didn't back off of this based on the kindness of the corporation. They backed off of this because of both, yes, I believe it's your pressure, but it's also because of what just happened at OSHA and the carve-out that happened by the government agency, or this would not have taken place. Pastor Lang.
Yes, sir. We were elated last night. We were on a call, a group of us. We were doing our evening DOR, which is just a gathering together to encourage each other and to work together. And so we got a few phone calls. I received a phone call from a very dear friend in the organization, and I know Jeremy could speak to his, but I got a phone call, and somebody just was caring about me from the company, very caring, and said, "How are you doing? Did you hear the news?" And so we were elated last night that we had dodged the initial bullet. But our concern is that we believe that we are still undefended. I thank God for Great Lakes Justice Center, but I'm talking about from our perspective, from our company. We are now under the OSHA, and we don't know how that is going to work its way through the courts, whether or not it's going to be ruled unconstitutional, or whether or not the executive order from the president going through the Labor Department, through OSHA. We don't know. We may still be forced to get the vaccine under that. So we still feel that we are in harm's way. We're still concerned. All it did was just changed hands from the federal mandate to now being under OSHA. But we're looking for support. We're looking for our leaders to take this once in a lifetime opportunity that is given to them to be able to enjoin one of the litigants that are standing up, one of the states, or join with somebody, or however they want to go about it. But our plea and our ask is that they would use their resources. And I do understand it's a tall order, and I do understand the likelihood of success. Suing a sitting president doesn't look good. And we understand that there is, it would take a lot of resources. We understand that not everybody in our company agrees that we should stand up against this. There are people who do not agree with our position. And we're grateful for them to be able to make their own choice medically. We're 100% behind people being able to make their choice about what to do with this vaccination. But there are many who are not being defended and are going to be let go if our religious exemptions are denied for some reason. And we will not take the vaccination if this goes, if it's upheld to be constitutional. Then there's a lot of us that are exposed. And
Jeremy, what do you have to add to that from your standpoint?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. You were speaking to me, correct?
Yeah. What do you have to add to that from a corporate standpoint and an individual standpoint?
Yeah, I'd like to mirror a lot of what Charles said there. So we were on the call. I got a call from somebody I trust very much, who knows the pain that a lot of us have been in, and I was very firm that my job, I would willingly walk away from it if I was not approved for a religious exemption. There was no doubt in my mind, but many were tortured, and so I got a call from somebody just like Chuck, who was concerned about me when he heard, and he wanted to let me know that we were out of the woods on that point. But so obviously we were grateful for that, and even today, the company put out some things, and there were some things we were grateful for. There was some admission that that communication wasn't very good over the last couple of weeks and things like that. But I would mirror a lot of what was just said, that the company is relieved because and we're all relieved. But the fact is that they aren't the ones who came to our rescue. We got off on a technicality, and I'm glad for that. But we don't know what the future holds, and we would still there's been some trust broken there, and there's a desire that we would be able to know that our company is going to be behind us in the future.
David, I know you're hearing this all over the state and around the country right now, and we really shouldn't be putting company owners in these positions either, because their attorneys are risk averse, and so they, I think, are trying to follow and cover their rear ends, honestly. But I do believe that this is the hill that we have to be willing to die on. We cannot allow OSHA or an executive federal order or a state order to be able to control our businesses and our individual lives. We know we cannot step on individual business rights to hire and fire people. They have to be able to have the ability to do that. But in regards to these orders, we have to know where the line is drawn, and we cannot give up our freedoms and then be thrilled or happy when we get some of them back. David, fill in the gaps.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Ron. I think what this is bringing to light for people is the power of the administrative state. Our government is being taken over by an administrative state. Congress is becoming almost irrelevant. The courts have this doctrine, they call it the Chevron doctrine, where they defer to what agencies do, unless it's this really, really high standard. In other words, the little guy gets run over every day of the week by these agencies on all kinds of issues because courts just defer to them. This has got to stop. And you see a lot of our Supreme Court justices right now, Alito, Thomas, I think Gorsuch, have clearly signaled that they want to get rid of that doctrine and allow the courts to step in and stop this administrative attack on business and on individual rights in our country. These people are unelected. They're not accountable to anyone. They're not even accountable to the president. They have their own protections under civil service rules and laws and everything else. The president can't get rid of them. It's just turned into a nightmare. And we're seeing the results of it right now with OSHA. Now is going to be in charge of our health decisions. Really? When did this happen? When did Congress give them the authority, OSHA, the authority to do that? They deal with asbestos and workplace safety, like so you don't get your hand cut off by a machine, handrails, stuff like that. They've never had anything to do with health and that sort of thing ever. So where do they get the authority to do this? They don't have the authority. They make it up. That's the problem. And then they do it. And then the other branches of government just act like they're powerless and they can't do anything to stop it. That's the real danger here. People are seeing it now because of these health vax mandates, but it's across the board. It's so many things where agencies are now taking over, and we have to stop them. We have to.
So we do have was on a call today, and all of the senators, Republican senators, are standing unified to not fund OSHA in these continuing resolution that may be coming up in December. They're looking to pull that out. They're actually debating right now of whether they should allow the government to be shut down in order for this to not happen, or what exactly or how they will push this. And of course, we're pushing them to say, this is a hill, this is a place. Now, what they want to do is, and it's the same thing we saw here in Michigan, they'd like to now defer and say, well, the courts will pull us out of this. We could defend on maybe the Sixth Circuit because, and for those of you that don't know, the Sixth Circuit is a 11-5, meaning appointed by Republicans versus Democrats. It's a very conservative, probably the second, maybe beyond the Fifth Circuit, maybe the 8th, right? Something like that. But it's a pretty darn good circuit, but it depends on our draw as to who you get in those, in that particular. Either way, it will be appealed. It could be heard by the whole circuit, correct? Or it could be, and eventually will go to the Supreme Court, but that's not going to happen by January. Now, OSHA has indeed, because of course it was by a court order, they have officially today suspended their implementation and enforcement of the vaccine mandates, and they've made that official. It's on their website, so they're not moving forward. If as you recall, until this Fifth Circuit gave this much broader stay, I guess you could say, whatever it was, until then, the administration said, don't pay any attention to this. Ignore what the Fifth Circuit originally said in its stay, because don't worry, it's going to be overthrown. It reminds us of what our governor did when the 1945 law was being utilized and it was told to be unconstitutional. She pivoted immediately to the health departments and said, I can do whatever I want over here as long as I want. I won't do it under my name. And that's what Biden is looking to do with OSHA, is utilize something that's there, fund them and weaponize them. And who are we going to complain to is the question. What do you see as an answer to that?
Well, the answer is that our elected officials have to step up, and Congress has to step up and stop them, pass legislation. And obviously right now, Biden would veto anything that they put in place, just like here in Michigan. Our legislature has been passing all kinds of bills that have been great, and election reform and mandates and all kinds of stuff. And Governor Whitmer vetoes them all. So we have to get rid of these people. We have to come out next year and vote and exercise our rights as citizens. And I think we're starting to see that happening. Even last night, Columbia, South Carolina, wasn't it, where the mayor won, if you guys heard about that? In Columbia, President Biden got 71% of the vote a year ago. 71%. Solidly Democratic city, right? Last night in the mayoral election, the Republican won. I am telling you that this groundswell is real. The Democrats can deny it, stick their head in the sand all they want. But what we're talking about here goes beyond Democrat, Republican. I mean, we have so many average, everyday working people, union people who work in all kinds of fields. And now they're starting to realize, wow, I'm voting for these people who are doing this to me, And I think you're going to see a groundswell. Who is left for them to vote for other than those on the other side of the aisle who are fighting against it? And I think you're going to see a groundswell. That's a way to go after it. And of course, the courts, which is what we do through Great Lakes Justice Center. And we've been having some success in some of our cases, and most of our cases, as well as others around the country. I think the courts are starting to, especially on the vaccine mandate, most courts, I think, are looking at this going, no, wait a minute, that's way too far. You cannot force people to take this kind of medical injection and treatment against their will. And let me just say as an aside, if you hear people talking about the Jacobson case from 1905, where the U.S. Supreme Court ruled on a Massachusetts law, actually it was just a city ordinance there, that just means government can mandate vaccines. That is a complete lie. And I invite you to look at Justice Gorsuch in a recent opinion. It was in a concurring opinion. He blew up that argument and totally showed how false that is. So anybody that says to you, well, the U.S. Supreme Court's ruled they can mandate vaccines, that's a lie. That Jacobson case does not stand for that. And I don't think there's a majority on our Supreme Court right now that would support forcing people to take medical treatments they do not want. And if they do, God help us all. I mean, we are all in trouble at that point. If the government can do that to us, what can't they do to us?
And the great news, David and Jeremy and Chuck, is that we are also seeing daily, and the reason this delay is important is we are finding more and more information out from overseas that our media is lying to us about in regard to what natural immunity is doing for people, how it is so much stronger and better than those that have been vaccinated, how the Delta variant seems to have actually been created or being spread more from people who are vaccinated while or right in close proximity of when the first variant was still going on. And that's why you're seeing countries like Sweden who didn't get the vaccination until that first wave was done. And you're seeing no Delta variant in Sweden. You're seeing the highest vaccination rates in the world in Israel. They've had their second and third booster already, and they have a 93% of the people that are in ICUs or hospitalizations are fully vaccinated. We're finding out more and more about this, which means that the decisions you make, it doesn't mean you should or shouldn't take a vaccine, but it means to order it done on an emergency vaccination or to force it on your children who literally have had, again, a total number of 576 children under the age of 18 that have passed away with COVID. Again, we cannot, for some reason, be able to do any studies to be able to say what were the underlying health conditions of these 576 children, because I can guarantee you almost every single one of them had underlying conditions, not unlike the comorbidity that happened with the vaccine or with the people dying of younger ages with COVID in general. But when it comes to children, we now had, of course, the CDC. I'll also wanted your opinion on this one, but the CDC says it has no records at all under a FOIA request of people who are naturally immune transmitting the virus that causes COVID-19. They have zero data on people who have had COVID, ended up getting a second variant, and whether they were even able to transfer or to transmit this to anybody else in the population. They have, and when they were asked about it in the FOIA request, they said, we do not collect that data. Why would we not collect that data in order for us to move forward? Of course, we have lawsuits on other and alternative treatments as well. But I think right now what we're saying is the first premise is, are we in an emergency? That's the question we had. And if so, how does it get to pick and choose who falls under the emergency and who doesn't? That is a question that I think the courts should look at beyond just the authority of an emergency. We also have to recognize this existing emergency, and does it actually exist? Do you believe that, David? I'm not a lawyer.
No, that's true. And that you're going to see that more and more in cases that are coming up. We're going to start arguing that. What, we have an emergency that lasts forever? There's no end to this. Are we even still in a pandemic? Now, you can look at it, and the numbers, if you believe the reporting, the numbers of new COVID cases are rising in Michigan, at least. They're going down in other areas. But again, it's hard to believe the information we're being told when we've been lied to so many times. That's the problem. And so it doesn't mean COVID's not real, doesn't mean it's not a serious illness. It doesn't mean probably all of us have been touched with either family members or friends or people at church, work, who've died from COVID. Of course, that's the case. But that doesn't mean our constitutional rights disappear and that now we have a totalitarian government because COVID's around. Enough's enough. I mean, people can make their own choices. You could take reasonable precautions for yourself, depending on your age, where you are in your life, those sorts of things. We don't need to turn over our freedoms to this government, and especially the way they're being abused. So people, like we said before, people need to stand up, they need to fight and not take this. Do it in a right way. Don't go in yelling and screaming and threatening people and that sort of thing. That's crazy. Don't do that. But you can be calm and persuasive and rational, as opposed to a lot of those folks on the other side who are acting quite lunatic about it. I'm sure we're all racist, right? We're all white supremacists. That's what they believe. And we all know that's not true. But we need to calmly and rationally respond and push back within the system and exercise our rights. That's what we have the right to do. We should do it.
And I'd like to ask Jeremy and Chuck to add in here. I want you all to know also that this is not a Republican or a Democratic issue. This is an American freedom issue. It's about you as employees defending each other's individual rights to choose. And I want you to make sure when you share that information that the union should be defending you, all of you, against the corporation, and the people that are administration should be there defending each one of you to be able to hold on to your individual rights and not mandate their corporation from doing anything. They should be fighting this battle with the federal government as well. So, Jeremy, what do you have to say to that? And I want to hear your closing comments here.
Yeah, I would agree with that sentiment pretty much completely, Ron. I think it goes way beyond Republican and Democrat. I think it's an accountability problem. I don't think it matters what's next to the letter or is next to the name of your representative. I think the problem is we vote these people in and then we forget about them for 4 years and we don't pay any attention. This is our republic, and God has given us the responsibility that comes with liberty. Our founders recognized that liberty and responsibility were closely tied together. Liberty was given to us by God. It was given to the government to protect it, and it was our responsibility to make sure that they fulfilled that role and that they recognized that they're accountable to God as well. So that's my main point to this whole thing.
Amen, Jeremy. And Chuck, what do you have to add to that?
Please, if you are an American that honors your values your freedom, your medical freedom, and you want to join other like-minded Americans who value their freedom, their medical freedom, we invite you, please, to gather in downtown Jackson on this Saturday morning at 11 a.m. to hear a wonderful cast of speakers there as we join together with our fellow employees, and plus employees from many other companies are going to be there. And we're anti-mandate, and we are pro-freedom, and we're going to stand together and use our voice. So that's November 20th, Saturday morning, downtown Jackson, 11 a.m. and go to ubcmi.com. ubcmi.com. Go to the events link and you'll be able to see our flyer. You'll be able to see a map. You'll be able to see do's and don'ts. We're coming respectfully, but we're coming together to share our voices and to stand for our personal choices, our personal medical freedom. We're fortunate to have Mr. Kallman, and he is going to be one of our speakers. Jeremy will be one of our speakers. We have Representative Joe Bellino, and he is the House Energy Committee Chair. He is going to be speaking. We're going to have a Jackson County Commissioner who authored a resolution to make it illegal in Jackson County for people that are doing business with the county to mandate masks and vaccines. So Commissioner Tony Baer from Jackson County will be speaking. We have a representative from Congressman Tim Walberg. Mr. Stephen Reiser is going to represent the congressman. We have Pastor Jason Georges from Stand Up Michigan, from Corunna, from Emmanuel Baptist Church. He'll be our keynote speaker, and he is going to deliver a message of hope and encouragement and standing for what we believe. And so I understand we may feel like David and facing a Goliath, but we know how that worked out. And so please join us. Tell everyone you know about it, and bring all freedom-loving Americans to join us in downtown Jackson this Saturday.
Thank you, Charles. And David, I'd like to give you a couple of minutes, mainly just to talk to the people out here, because they're all struggling in their own ways, whether it's kids with masks in school or vaccinations in their jobs. And the Great Lakes Justice Center, between you and your son, Stephen, and Professor Wagner, have been so out there, not only on our state. We're so lucky to have you in our state fighting for us and fighting for those around the country. I just really appreciate you. And if you have just a few words for the people out here, or maybe not be a consumer's employee, but realize we are winning this battle, meaning we're waking up Americans and teaching them about our freedoms.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. Thanks for those kind words. Look, we're just doing what we believe God wants us to do in all these areas. And as Pastor Lang was saying, we encourage everybody to come out and be there Saturday morning, because when people are consumers and other people are seeing large crowds of people saying, no, enough is enough, but being respectful and not yelling and screaming and burning and looting like we see around the country from other types of protests. And that sends a message in and of itself. But let me just end with 2 points here. One, we talk about that, we hear it all the time. It's safety, it's for the children. We just need to protect our kids and, that sort of thing. You're going to kill grandma. When you hear stuff like that, I always think of Ben Franklin, who said when people cry for safety and safety, and they're willing to give up their freedom, he said, anybody who'll give up their freedom for a little bit of safety deserves neither. And that is so true. I mean, Ben Franklin is right. And then I'll end with this. I really like John Quincy Adams. I've read a lot about him. He's one of our earlier presidents, I think the 5th or 6th president. And people forget he served 16 years in Congress after he was president. And he went there because he fought to abolish slavery. And he was there 16 years. And he would fight, do petitions and introduce bills and all the time. And then nothing was happening. This is back in the 1830s, 1840s, right? And so somebody asked him one time, Mr. President, you're here fighting all the time to try to stop slavery, and you're not getting any results. Nothing seems to be happening. You've been here for years. How come you're still fighting? And he responded and he said, well, it's because duty is ours, results are God's. And that is a profound statement. And so, yeah, we might lose a battle here, or we might, something that might look bad to us right now might happen. But you remember, God's in control of these things. Duty is ours. We do what we're called to do, but the results are in his hands. And I think when you understand that, you don't get discouraged and you don't run away from the fight. And as Dr. Erwin Lutzer says all the time, and if you haven't read his book on We Will Not Be Silenced, you need to read that book. But he said he's trying to encourage people to run toward the flame, not away from it. And that right now in our country, if you speak the truth, that's a revolutionary act, to speak the truth. And we see it right now. Look at the Rittenhouse trial farce that's going on right now. Absolutely. I mean, to speak the truth is a revolutionary act. So I just encourage everybody who's out there, might be listening to this, or can come on Saturday. I hope every single one of you is a revolutionary in that sense. Speak the truth. Stand up. Everybody has a sphere of influence. Everybody has a circle of friends, a church, work, community, neighborhoods. You got to stop sitting back and just letting things happen. Do it in a calm, reasoned, rational way, but you got to stand up. Amen. And that's what is starting to happen more and more. And I'm glad to see it.
Amen. Thank you, David. Charles.
Yes. If you want more information on what we're doing, our email address is unitedbyculture1910@gmail.com. unitedbyculture1910@gmail.com. We are also, look for United by Culture on Signal. Look for United by Culture on Telegram. We are being shadow banned on Facebook. We're United by Culture on Facebook. Nice. But if you'll email us and we can get your contact information, then we should be able to ship you the link to allow you to be able to join. Or if you know somebody that's already in the group, they can invite you to the group. But they're fighting us. But email us, unitedbyculture1910@gmail.com.
Thank you. Jeremy.
Yeah, I would just like to add to that our website is up and running as well. So find us at ubcmi.com. And I believe you can connect us through a link right there as well.
Yeah, don't depend on Facebook or YouTube or any of these. I can promise you that we're not only being shadow banned. I've seen these numbers go, they literally spiked up and then they spiked right back down again that are watching live. It is an amazing thing of what we're seeing because we're on 5 different networks here. We kind of spread it around, but we've moved mostly to locals now because we don't trust anything that the big tech is doing with us. So you got to spread the word in person. You got to use emails. You've got to go to people's websites, and you got to be with people in person, which is why we say show up in Jackson and talk to other people. You'll feel a lot more strength about us standing up when you realize that we are the majority. The media just doesn't want to let us think we are. So thank you all for joining. Everybody have a great evening. And we are going to win this battle because ultimately we know who's in control.
Amen.
All right.
All right.
Have
thanks.
a great evening. Thanks, everybody. Continue to stand up.